D2C Tech Conference by Instamojo. So today is a closed room event. We are hoping that people who are joining in, they ask questions to the speakers today directly. Do remember your mics will remain off, but you're free to use the chat feature. Today we have a very special session planned. The speakers for today will indulge in a candid conversation about the roadmap, challenges, and strategy that a D2C brand needs to know when aiming for success. Our original speaker for today was Soumen, the CEO and founder of Instamojo. However, because of unforeseen circumstances, we had to make last-minute adjustments. So instead, we have with us Ankur Sharma, the co-founder and the chief product officer at Instamojo, an e-commerce platform that has powered the online businesses of 2 million plus merchants with their host of D2C solutions like landing pages, online stores, and payment gateway. Joining him in conversation is Soumen, the chief revenue officer of Blissclub, India's fastest growing D2C activewear brand for women. Soumen has also previously worked with e-commerce superstars like Swiggy, Myntra, and Meesho. Not to mention, he also has experience with overseeing e-commerce channels for the Landmark Group and a Dubai-based fashion brand. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. Hello, hi Ankur, hi Soumen. Excited?
Ankur, yeah, really excited.
Yep. Thank you, Rai.
Okay, so we have about 40 minutes of conversation ahead of us, and then we hopefully will have a 10-15 minute AMA. In the middle of the conversation, if an interesting question pops up, feel free to maybe answer it, or if you want, you can wait till the end. You guys take the charge, you guys do as you guys wish, right? But I will start you guys off with a question and then slip into the shadows. So because this is the session of how to become a breakthrough D2C brand, maybe you guys can start us off by actually telling us what is a breakthrough brand, and here, why don't you start us off, Soumen, according to you, what is a breakthrough brand?
Yeah, sure. I think for me, if you have to ask me a single metric which really makes a brand sort of stand out, is maybe the NPS of the brand itself, right? And because of multiple factors. When I say Net Promoter Score or NPS of a brand, it sort of spans across the product quality to the experience, to the interface you are giving to the user to transact with you. Now, the reason it's so important for any brand to have a world best-in-class NPS is one, it sort of ensures that you have a very, very healthy repeat and retention base, right? And you always have the best-in-class LTV. Now, better the LTV, the higher the appetite for any brand to go back and acquire users, right? Because one of the fundamental equation any e-com or D2C brand sort of chases is LTV by CAC. So better the LTV, better the CAC. What it does as a second order effect is, LTV also creates a group of loyalists for you. So these are the users who will go and talk about your brand to the folks in and around, right? And they sort of then act as a organic source of referral and acquisition for you, which in itself is a very, very powerful tool in today's world, especially on online first brand. And third, what it also does is, give enough bandwidth to the team to think about clutter breaking innovation which should unlock the new TAM for you, right? Otherwise, it always happens to be a chase out game that, hey, my LTV is crashing because my NPS is low and hence try to acquire more users. Whereas it should be the other way around, that once you acquire a user, he becomes a brand loyalist. And then your bandwidth should focus on what next in terms of acquiring a user. So for me, as long as a brand has a great NPS and can command a higher share of wallet in the category it plays in, I think your job is half done. And after that, it's about continuous innovation and ensuring that the brand love is there. Maybe Ankur, I would love to hear from you. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And repeat purchases are super critical for D2C, especially because while acquisition, there are certain channels. It's really important to get the LTV in place because that's where the longevity of the customer will come. And at the end of it, the customer acquisition costs are going to go higher and higher over time as competition increases. So it's really, really important to sort of make sure that the existing customers continue to be with you, continue to be impressed with your brand, and also then continue to purchase, because once it's far easier to get LTV from your existing customers versus to acquire newer customers. Which also brings back to the question of how do you reduce CAC, because CAC becomes a very critical metric, and especially in the early stages of a business, because that's where acquisition costs are getting higher, advertising is getting more expensive. What are your thoughts, Soumen, on how can we cap the acquisition cost, because that's the first big challenge also in terms of becoming a breakthrough brand?
No, yeah, I think very, very interesting problem statement, right? And I think this problem statement spans beyond just D2C, even for e-com, right? And like before I try to answer that question, rather, let me also set like context of why this happens, right? Any online first brand has a limited TAM that you target. So you talk about the D2C brands. Let's say in case of Blissclub, you know your TG is a slightly mid-premium customer, women in the 25 to 45 years age group. And then being an online ecosystem, you go and chase that customer in the Meta or Google ecosystem, right? Same, for example, a Misho would have a 300 million TAM, but at the end of the day, the TAM is what is you believe your core product solves for, right, as a PMF. Now, in the early stages of a brand's journey, what D2C has fundamentally been able to do against the traditional companies is using Meta and Google, you are able to reach out to a larger base of customers in a very short period of time, right? A brand like an HUL or let's say Madura's or Peter England's of the world would have taken so much time in terms of availability or distribution to go up before a customer even knows about you. That's what Meta and Google has done for the D2C brands, because in a span of month or few months, you are able to at least hit the TAM once on the online space, right? Now, what happens is you see a fundamental growth as you keep reaching more TAM. But after a point of time, you realize that, hey, I have reached to every customer that I should have as part of my TAM. And now the only source of growth is keep hitting these users over and over again, right? And that's where you see start CAC going up fundamentally, because you're then building frequency without realizing that the early adopters who had to purchase have already purchased. And now you're trying to unlock the next set of users within this TAM, right? And if that is the fundamental problem that you are trying to solve, I think there are three principles, I would say, which one should follow. One is always keep watching for what is the new unlock. When I say new unlock in terms of use case. So for example, a brand may start as a very niche brand selling product XYZ, solving for ABC problem, right? And with this value proposition, you are able to get some percentage of the total TAM you have. Now you have exhausted that TAM. So don't try to push that product over and over again, right? Rather start working proactively towards, let's say, another solution which solves for DGF problem, so as to say, right? What that does is, even if a customer knows about you, but was not able to come back to your brand because he or she never felt the use of that problem statement, right? Now with the new use case that you have, you've been able to get that customer to come and try you out, right? That's one. Second is, and maybe this is more specifically true for D2C first brand, is how do you position your brand in the mind of a consumer, especially in today's world where there's too much clutter, so as to say, right? Like if you click on any brand, you will be hit again by 4 different brands selling the same product. And hence it's very different or very difficult also to call out why you are so special versus someone else, right? And hence taking that brand marketing lens and trying to connect to the user persona or user's vision is very, very important. The third is just distribution, right? That in spite of you being there, you selling a great product, users understanding what your brand stands for, there is some hitch here and there to try that product for the first time, right? And that's why you have to ensure that you are very strong in your distribution. And that's why you also fundamentally see a lot more D2C brands going omnichannel. It's not necessarily meaning an additional revenue channel, but for us, maybe omnichannel is a route for trial and getting the customer on board, right? Because a lot of times what happens is when your TG is not very, very comfortable using D2C websites or online savvy, but offline is still 80-90% of India how it shops, right? It becomes easier when you're there in a mall and the user shops. They have heard about the brand, they have seen the brand ads or the product ads. Now it becomes easier to just walk into the store, feel the product, touch the product, and go ahead, right? So I think one, focus on new product unlocks. Second, selling the story better. Third, improving your distribution. And maybe fourth is, in this process, how do you keep de-risking Meta and Google dependency and start building your organic as a source of revenue very big, right? Organic takes a long lead time to grow. For example, a lot of us try out SEO as a big mode for the brand. But SEO doesn't happen overnight like DM. It takes a lot of seeding to actually make a significant contribution. Similarly, removing friction in your website journey itself, right, is an important area for you to give a seamless experience to a user, so that if you're getting 100 sessions, at least 10 more people convert, right? So I think some of those fundamental nudges with selective targeting should help you somewhere in reducing CAC fundamentally.
So very interesting, Soumen, and I think this elaborate answer has also given us some very interesting insights to ponder upon and like to sort of deep dive into them. And one of the things that you interestingly mentioned is about making your brand outstand, because as you rightly said, if you are advertising on Meta or Google, there will be several other similar brands, similar categories who will be advertising like probably right next to you,
Yeah.
which becomes a problem of like, how do I stand out? And especially in early stages, it becomes tempting to give discounts. And it has been seen, especially in the world of marketplaces, that deep discounting has indeed worked, especially for standardized products. Flipkart, Amazon, Meesho are really building their empire on the top of the deep discounting philosophy. And there has also been like, different kind of talks of like goods and bads of deep discounting. But what's your opinion on deep discounting as a strategy in D2C world? Do you think like it works, doesn't work? What are its pros and cons?
Yeah, I mean, interesting question again, right? I think discounting in today's world is a necessary evil at times, right? But very broadly, I think the pros of discounting, what that helps you in, one, I think very fundamentally going back to the last point, it at least helps you bringing in that first purchase, right? And after that, if your product experience is great, you hope to make that user stick and keep upselling and cross-selling, right? So one pro is, let's say, bringing down the trial barrier for the new users. Second is it also for D2C brands, because it's a working capital heavy industry. There are also times when you take bet on certain products, and these are seasonal businesses, you want to get out of that. So it helps you in driving liquidation of certain capital that you want to free up and get more inventory in the pipeline, right? I think third interesting use case which discounting can be used for is being competitive, as you said, right? Like for example, in the month of August, September, October, with the entire ecosystem being on discounts, no matter how great a brand you are, like if you are not being competitive, an Indian market, which is a so price sensitive market, you just end up losing your share of wallet, right? In that point of view, even for repeat customers. So I think those are the three areas where I think discounting helps us in. I think the areas which becomes a con in this process is one is, I think, brand imagery, as you pointed out, right? You should not build a habit of you being a discount driven brand, because even then your loyalist users have a perception that, hey, I will buy, I have a need of this brand's product, but only I know that there's a discounting coming, right? So why not like wait out for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, right? So that's one. Second is what it also does in the purpose is when you get the new users on back of discount, you're fundamentally acquiring a not so perfect TG for you. So your cost of acquisition goes down because you're able to get that customer at a lower rate. But these users are also deal-seeking users, right? So the LTV of these users are very poor. So then suddenly you realize that, hey, my LTV is on a downward trend, and hence I don't have enough money to go and plow back to get new customers, right? I think that's the second one. I think the way around it is being very, very selective and targeted, right? In a way. So even if you are, let's say, opening up deep discounting to certain cohort of users, maybe like, let's say from a meta angle, right? You whitelist a lookalike audience which doesn't buy from you on discount, right? And only target certain cohort of users, which may be tier 2, tier 3. Second, layer it with a selective category list only, right? Don't do it like a whitewash across entire brand or products. Maybe do it in a very, very selective product-led way, where you don't burn money because your GM percentages are high. And second, you know that you have a lot of inventory, which can act as an acquisition driver for you, right? So yeah, I think discounting, as long as it's done smartly, selectively, and in a way targeted or infrequent way, should see off some of the brand imagery erosion that you see in the long run. But it's a constant juggle that I think everyone sort of faces with in today's world.
Yeah, no, it is a double-edged sword, and like it's important to strike that balance, because you cannot come across as a always discount brands. Like we are aware of those always discounts brand where you're like very used to get 80% discounts, and essentially discount takes over product quality in those scenarios, which sort of can hurt the brand in the longer term as well. But similarly, discounts are also, as you rightly said, critical to get that first purchase, because there are lots of inhibitions, lot of trust factors, lots of unknowns that when you're buying from a D2C brand versus from an established brand. But after you've gotten that first purchase, in order to increase LTVs, of course, repeat purchases are important, and that's where D2C platforms go for loyalty programs. And I've seen that Blissclub also has a loyalty program of its own, like a rewards program. So has that been effective in terms of driving LTV? Do you think loyalty program is something that every brand should have, or only certain kind of brands it works for, considering you guys have had some experience with a loyalty program of your own?
Yeah, I mean, see, again, loyalty is also sometimes I feel like not, how do I put it, like not efficiently used as a term, right? I think everyone believes that, hey, like let's have a program in place which gives coins away or points away every time another user does a purchase. It's called loyalty. It's not as simple as that. And I also feel that in Meesho or even in Blissclub, there's a long way to go, right? I think what you have is an infrastructure in place. How do you use it is the actual true sense of loyalty program, right? I think the industries which really cracked loyalty program was, let's say, Jet Airways, right? The Jet Mile system sort of thing. Now, like I can't think of any brand which doesn't have a so-called loyalty program. But very fundamentally thought, what does loyalty program do for you? Right? One, loyalty program, what it does is you don't want to discount to your repeat user. At the same time, you want to make that repeat user feel exclusive to be part of the brand community, right? And what hence loyalty program should very principally do is, given all other brands in the ecosystem that this user can buy into, your repeat user should continue to buy with you, right? And what that means is, you remain the top of mind every time this user have a purchase in mind, right? So that means driving urgency in purchase towards you. So demand shaping that purchase towards you. And that's why a lot of the loyalty programs have a time-bound expiry period as a construct, right? Second is demand shaping towards categories. Now, where this is coming from is when you have to increase the LTV of a user. One of the important metrics that some of the Western companies, especially OTT or social feeds use, is called habit formation point. Habit formation point is if you take a new user to a certain journey in their transaction history, you believe that the user has reached habit formation and they will continue to stick with you. And this habit formation is time bound as well as purchase bound, right? So what you want to do as a brand is fundamentally make this user purchase all your categories so that you are top of mind for any purchase this user has for the relevant categories that you offer in, right? So the second point of loyalty program is demand shaping towards all categories, right? And what that means is if you have, let's say, 1,000 coins, the burning of those coins, you can get 100 rupees in a product that you have already purchased, but you will get 300 rupees on a product which you have never purchased from this brand, right? Or a category you have never purchased. What is essentially doing is you are breaking through into that user's wardrobe through that category now, which you have not done in the past, right? So that's number 2. Number 3 is loyalty program, or rather loyalty coins can also drive some good habits within the user. When I say good habits is, a very fundamental example is you want the users to review and rate you, right? On the app store, on the products, etc., because it creates social validation. Now, even if you like the product as a user, there is no incentive for you to really go and take that habit, right? And hence that's where I feel that loyalty program has this powerful impact of driving certain actions that you want to do the other user for, right? And hence a lot of these programs also have like rate us or review us and get X points, right? Which you can get. So I think those are the 3 main aspects of loyalty coin. One, how do you increase your time-bound share of wallet? Second, how do you drive category adoption across your journey? Third is how do you drive a better behavior? And fourth, which is a second order effect of having loyalty program, is if you have lost this user because the loyalty program was not there, right? Then you would have gone out again, spent money to get this user back fundamentally, right? Which is an even bigger cost. So might as well give, let's say, that 5% coins through the purchase versus trying to spend again 20% discounting or perf marketing money to get this user back in the system.
I think loyalty program, in a way that you've described it, it seems like it attacks several key metrics in one go. Like it impacts LTV because it drives repeat purchases. It also, interestingly, you mentioned that it can drive even NPS. Like when people review in return for like a coin or a reward, then that gets into a positive affirmation of a brand and also gets word of mouth, which eventually gets more people attracted, and you get like a trustworthy brand with like very large number of positive reviews. So that way, I think it sort of feels like it's an underrated kind of a tool, which if like used effectively can potentially move a lot more of your metrics with this, if rightly used.
Yeah. I think that's true, right? I think what a lot of brands have the construct, but I think what fundamentally one need to do is use it efficiently across different use cases that you want to, right? I think that's where the game breaks or wins, right? At the end of the day.
Yeah, and also like this whole, that was very interesting for you to bring the whole point of driving other category demand via loyalty points, because like, and you mentioned it via CAC point as well, that it's also important to continue to expand your categories.
Yeah.
And also make current users discover those categories, and that's one of the ways to like drive more demand to larger customer base and so on. You also had mentioned while customer acquisition point that it's also important to over time increase your cohort of customers who are going to be buying from you. And one of the things that we've seen is brands opening physical stores. Like a lot of D2C brands, their journey starts online only.
Yeah.
Maybe they go to marketplaces, but then they also start tapping offline stores. Is that strategy? And I believe Blissclub has now 2 stores. I think one in Bangalore, one in Mumbai. So clearly, you guys are on that path of expanding your reach via offline. But is that strategy critical for improving your TAM? Like, because at the end of it, you can't work with limited TAM. So what are your thoughts? Like, what has been the thought behind going offline? It's been a recent development. Is it imperative? Is that really the final, is it really that big a milestone for a D2C brand? Is a D2C brand always, if a successful D2C brand, always going to go into offline? Love to know your thoughts on that.
No, sure. I think the fundamental point of even trying out something like an offline for a D2C first brand goes back to the first discussion that we were having, right? That in an online setup and online ecosystem of marketing, you will always have some innovations, right? And it then boils down to the appetite of the company to keep growing, right? You can wait for like 5 years to grow to 100 or 300 or 500 crore brand. As the category emerges or people know about you, finally you have hit them 15 times. Or you can try to growth hack and try to get this user to you. Right? Now, why fundamentally you need an offline store beyond just SAM is, as I said, right, like no matter how much you reach out to a user, there are certain innovations of trying out a D2C website as such, right? Or the other option is you go to Amazon, Flipkart, or Myntras of the world and then plaster your brand. But that has a that's a double-edged sword, right? Once you start using Amazons and Myntras too much, then you suddenly realize that, hey, your discounting goes off the roof. You start making products for Amazon and Myntra. And third, more like that's the deal breaker for me, is you don't own the customer at the end of the day. So you can't retarget a customer, etc. And then how do you own the customer? If a website is not getting you those, might as well try to get those users in offline, right? And that was the whole principle of trying out offline for us. I don't think it's a right strategy also to go very deeper through offline. But the idea is if you have defined a core market for you in the initial days, which is let's say top 20 cities in certain areas or catchments. And the good part about D2C ecosystem is you now have a lot of data to pinpoint and say that, hey, this is a lat long that you should go and open up a store, right? Yeah. Because you know the website sessions, Google search history, this is where you're getting traction, but maybe conversion is poor. So you can pinpoint and say that I want a store here. And then very fundamentally attack those lat longs to that level, right? And so that's what retail has been doing for us. 2 stores have worked fantastically well so far for us. And interestingly, you know what we have also seen is when you open up a store in Bangalore, let's say, right, and you look at the catchment of a 5-6 kilometer, when you look at pre-store opening versus post-store opening and normalize for noises, you see your organic sessions conversion has actually gone up, right? And that for us is the win, because what you have been able to do with this is, one, create that retail spot as a community or a brand imagery driving spot. Second, you have been able to activate users to at least touch and feel your product, who can go back to online and start trying your product now, right? Because they now have a trust on the product at least and the brand because it has an offline store, right? And that for us is a win, which is how do you keep getting synergy between online and offline customers. The only thing to sort of keep in mind is you need to have a uniform experience, right? Be in respect to the design language that you use, be it in respect of the policies that you have. You cannot have one policy running online and one policy running offline. And hence the integration of that for me is a 10x hygiene factor to sort of check for.
Got it. No, I think it's interesting that offline store does not only serve as an entry point to a large set of customers who would have never gone online, but also sort of serves as an advertisement for a potential online user. It's like a grand display,
yeah,
and a very, very trustworthy display. Like it's much more than an advertising hoarding.
Yeah,
It's more like an experience center, and that's also sort of brings a lot of trust. I think in India, people still like want to buy from established brands. Like they don't want to really, like especially after the niche is over, right? Like I mean, of course, like online retail is less than 10% of the overall retail in the country still after so much years. And then there is this whole point of like, I only buy from established brands. And when you set up a shop, you are doing a fantastic advertisement as well and putting as yourself as established player, even at least in that locality. And I think it's a great point that about you know, knowing where to open your store. This could not have been thought of, I believe, just 10 years back, where it would have been a lot of guesswork, a lot of expensive capital flowing into like creating a store and then not working out and so on. But like has there been a culture shift, or like, you know, like an online brand works at a certain culture, there are certain operations, and it is very different from offline. And when an online brand wants to get into offline, have you seen some challenges? Like what are some new things that you guys discovered that you never thought of while running this journey online only?
Yeah, I mean, there of course there's a fundamental DNA difference of how online runs versus offline, right? Like the starting point is one, that the mindset or the kind of people who have online versus offline are very different, right? Offline means hard execution. So for offline, I think the real game actually begins at location selection. Your location determines 70 or 80% of the business that you will do. Your location on the store format decides how profitable you will be doing. After that, the work actually happens on that remaining 20-30% incrementality, or really improving that goodness, right? So the kind of people you hire for retail needs to be a lot better at, let's say, networking skills, execution skills, getting like a lot of work done, right? Versus an online person for me, or an online revenue person for me, needs to be very sharp at numbers, needs to, you know, really work with cross-functional teams, putting together what comes out of looking at a lot of data points. So a lot more generalistic, analytical person versus a lot more project management or execution-driven person. I think that's the number one difference. Second, I think is just the width and depth play, right? And online fundamentally works on width. Like the more styles, the more SKUs that you have, the better are your chances of success, because you're able to capture that much visibility share, so as to say, right? At the end of the day, a retail has a constrained space. You can go and get a 5,000 square feet store, but then it will be that much difficult to justify the capex that you put in. So you will optimize the space that you want to get for retail. And that means there's only some percentage of your assortment that you will give visibility to. Now, what assortment you select becomes a very, very important move then, right? The third difference, which is I think in favor of offline, is you can do a lot better storytelling, right? Because you have brand custodians on the floor in terms of the retail staff. You have a lot more space to play around in the physical world to bring out the product details, which is very difficult in an online world to bring out, right? So I think that's the advantage of offline, which helps in customer acquisition. But also there are a lot of synergies, by the way, right? For both offline and online. I think the number one synergy is, one, you can use online data to forecast better for offline, be it in assortment, be it in terms of location. Second, you can own the customer better, because then you are giving a user an online and an offline distribution point to experience the brand. Third is, it makes the brand a little bit more powerful in the overall ecosystem, right? Same point, when you are just an online first brand, you are just one of the brands that our users post to on Instagram. Versus if you are one of the few brands on offline, then just the brand image or the brand love for the consumer sort of goes up, right? You can do a lot more with the store. And that's what we're trying to play with. For us, offline stores is just not about selling, but also creating a community. So for almost both the stores that we have launched and future that we'll be launching, we have something called as Blissclub community, where what we do there is, we get the people in the hyperlocal area to come, talk with each other, go for a walk, go for Pilates class together. It's sort of building community that, hey, you don't need to come and shop with us, right? But being an activewear community first brand, we want people to come talk to each other, especially women. In India, it's still like, women don't get enough opportunities like men to actually socialize with like-minded folks. And can we be that player which gives that platform to the users or the women to talk about their active lifestyle, about their habits, about their problems, challenges. So I think that can be a very powerful tool in driving a group of community and loyal members for the brand.
That's great. I think highlighting community is critical, and that's true for every D2C business, I believe. Not just D2C. Essentially, every business can benefit from community, and I think there's insight around offline store becoming a community where you are also popularizing your events, getting people just for communication. I think that's a great point. I would now like to start this other section where I want to reflect on your own journey, where you've come from marketplaces, the world of marketplaces, to now leading Blissclub, which is a D2C, and today we see D2C marketplaces are at loggerheads. So how has this shift been for you? Coming from one side to another, you spent a long time dealing with brands, but from the marketplace angle, and now you're on the other side. So how has this shift been for you?
Yeah, no, excellent question. I think I'm still sort of trying to figure out what else or what better can I do in D2C ecosystem, to be honest, right? But I can share my top of mind thoughts on this. I think in just the ways of operation, it's very different. A fundamental example is when you want to acquire user through perf marketing or meta on a marketplace, what you do is you have 2 million SKUs, right? And you have a 300 million TAM. You can just start a Dava campaign, like a random dynamic campaign, and let the user select, because one, lot of users, and second, lot of SKUs, right? That fundamentally shifts in a D2C brand. You have only, let's say, 1/10 of the audience to target, and you have only 1/100th of the SKU to sell, right? And you own this SKU. So doing a more deeper work in terms of storytelling, sharper targeting becomes much more important. Second thing is in online, every effort in a marketplace can give you 10x impact. So for example, from a product side, right? Given the product and tech team works with us, let's say you have changed a new feature or you have done some bit of homepage customization. Even a 1% uplift can really unlock 10,000 orders for you in a day's time, right? Which doesn't really happen in D2C. So the ROE of some of the effort needs to be thought through a little better, right? Similar 1% will give you 50, 100, 20, 200 orders, which is really doesn't justify 2 months work going into it, right? I think third, which is a fundamental difference, is at the end of the day, a brand is a brand, right? You feel a lot more closer that you're making a legacy when you're part of a D2C brand. You feel proud when you see someone wearing a Blissclub. That really doesn't happen when you're part of a Meesho or a Myntra or even Swiggy for that matter, right? At the end of the day, you know that you are a platform. So I think that's the other part of being part of a D2C brand also, that even if you're selling less and to selective consumers, but you feel more proud and love when you see a user wearing it, right? So yeah, I think those are the fundamental mindset differences that I am sort of accepting and also tuning myself to.
Even we have seen that at Instamojo, that when we see a small business getting orders and they becoming successful, it's a different kind of emotional high.
Yeah.
When you see somebody out of nowhere has limited resources, limited skill sets, but then also making it really we are comparing with huge behemoths when we talk about Swiggy or Myntra, but then there's a small tiny D2C brand that is 3-4 years old and still making a mark of their own. I think that's suddenly a very emotional high. So I completely agree there. Also wanted to know of course, you now move to D2C, you must be researching other D2C brands and looking at their strategies, how do they go about. Have some of the favorites come across? Of course, other than Blissclub, are there other brands that you they've admired you, and especially what have they done to really win your admiration, or what can we learn from some of those success stories?
Yeah, no, I don't think there is one single brand. I think a lot of brands to take learnings from, and for different reasons. I don't want to say that these are my favorite brands or so, but purely from a reflection or learning perspective, right? I can talk about a lot of brands. I think one, everyone knows, Mamaearth has seen a fantastic journey, right? One of the fastest brands to scale from 100 to 500 to 1000. So reaching to 0 to 100 is a great milestone, but the road becomes a lot more difficult when you move from 100 to 500 and to 1000. And what they have done in a 2 years time period is fantastic. So when I talk to some of these folks, especially in COVID times, of course there were certain tailwinds also that helped them in this whole period, was great. So that's from a growth journey perspective. Similarly, I think one brand that has done really great work in innovation from India's industry side is, I think, Noise. They are doing some great work in terms of products, or even Mosaic Wellness for that matter, right? Thinking very user first in coming up with their very curated products is great. I think third brand which I really like is Daminch, from a men's perspective, right? I think it's been in a way has been fundamentally been acquired by Jockey so much, and then followed by Calvin Klein. I think they are really trying to shake that market up and come up with some fantastic products. So yeah, I think net, I think there are a lot of interesting things to learn from every single brand, irrespective of where they stand in their journey, right? And India especially is going through this entire turmoil of D2C brands coming up. There are about 800 D2C brands in India itself, right? It's a $40 billion industry, and if you go deeper, every brand has something unique to offer, right? At the end of the day, so idea is to get as much learning as possible. It's a very interesting time, lot of brands coming up, and everyone is doing something right or even wrong for that matter to learn from, right? So yeah.
I think it's been interesting to see how D2C brands are innovating to now compete and bring products which were not even available in the country a couple of years back.
Yeah.
For like I remember it the only way to get some kind of products was to get it imported or get it from your friend who is coming from abroad. But now it's changing. Like you always for a lot of categories you have a counterpart Indian D2C company which is selling it. So I think D2C movement in a way has also allowed innovation in its own way, because it has it has not only helped innovator but also consumers to try out new things, and I think that's where early adopters and I think this ecosystem sort of is only going to grow over time. I have one just last question, and then we'll take a couple of questions from the audience. What does a day in your life looks like? Like as an executive of a D2C brand, how does your typical day look like? Like what do you do? I would love to know what are the different facets? And of course, it's probably the toughest question in this entire conversation, but just a glimpse into what goes behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, so the answer changes depending on the stage of the company, the quarter of you are operating in, right? But very broadly, I see there are 5 buckets of work in a profile like this, right? I think one is planning for the 6 months out to 1 year out window, and then figuring out what changes in strategy do you need, which you need to start working from now on, which will impact 6 months to 1 year down the line, right? So that's one. I think the second part is team hiring and development. In today's ecosystem, I think that's also a challenge, which is how do you keep getting right talent who is excited about the vision of the company more than just fancy designations or salaries, so as to say, right? And once you get those rare gems, you don't want to let go of them, right? So thinking about these talents, how to get them, how to keep them engaged, how to keep giving them more exposure, and how do you also grow them is, I think, very, very important as a leader. Third, I think when you are working in a very, very chaotic setup, which is true for most of the startups, your lot of effort also goes into streamlining processes and ways of working, right? Which is what metrics to see, how should you handshake between different functions, etc., right? And putting those right governance models in place. I think that's the third bucket. Fourth is, I think, just day-to-day firefighting and reviews. That's just a part and parcel of everyone's lives in e-com setup, right? Like you never know, something or the other might break. Like I might go out of this meeting and figure out that, hey, Pixel has broken because of which website is down. So you never know. It's just very difficult to predict what can come up at what time. I think that's the fourth important bucket. And then fifth is, which is very important to me, is how do you keep learning as a brand, right? And hence, how do you, as a leader, sort of be at the forefront of it? So as much as possible, doing outside in from other industries, talking to users, getting those insights is, I think, the fifth part. But I think the distribution of how much time goes into each of these 5 buckets keeps changing basis which quarter, what day you are in.
That's great. Soumen, I had a great time talking to you. There are a
here.
couple of questions from the audience. I think we can just take them and then we can wrap up. I will let you go to your 5 pillars
Hopefully
that
not
builds your
the
day. Yeah. So you mentioned about selective targeting while talking about customer acquisition and how you have to be really aware of who do you want to target. You also mentioned lookalikes. There's a question around what tools can help to do selective targeting. Are there certain tools which help you do that?
Yeah, so I think there are a lot of tools. It's nothing fundamentally very different from what others uses specially made for us. But I think at the end of the day, I would like to say that more than tools, right? It's just about how you use it or think about it, right? For example, when I talk to a lot of other perf marketing heads, when you say that your TAM is X million, then that X million, how do you sort of further cohort it? You can cohort it basis the kind of users that you've already acquired and hence creating a lookalike, for example. You can target saying that, hey, I have this XYZ product and this XYZ product has a higher probability of success in Y percentage of this TAM, right? And then trying to reach out to these audience through the available means. Some of that can be online. When you know that, for example, you want to tie a certain age group, certain interest-based group, maybe Meta can do the fantastic job. Versus you also know that there are certain users who through Meta will not convert. You use influencer as a route. So more important than I think selective targeting is thinking how do you target and then using the right channel to reach out to users. For example, one of the things that has really worked out for us was we felt that there was a certain 45 plus year age group, which is the largest market, but they don't convert through Meta, right? What we did was run workshops for them in the, so what we did was basically figure out who those users were, looking at a lot of statistics report, use proxy as someone using an iPhone, pink colored, etc. And then figured out what are the hotspots in Bangalore and Mumbai where they are, and then try to reach out to them directly, right, through a workshop. And maybe that works out better, right? So limited point is tools can only help you so much. And in today's world, I think, I'm sure like you guys also provide a lot of fantastic tools. You can always do some due diligence to figure out who should be the right partner. But at the end of the day, a lot of those inputs to using those tools should come first principles from your side.
Sounds good. On the topic of performance marketing, the next question is actually very interesting and intriguing to me as well. Would you recommend performance marketing for a new brand when a brand is just getting off its feet and has just started built their product, so they're clear about what product they want to sell, but then should they begin their journey with performance marketing, which is basically advertising on Meta, Google, or is there a better time or to do that? Like, what has been your thought on that?
Yeah, no, I think good question. I think in Meta also there are different types of marketing, by the way. When we say perf marketing on Meta, right, you can run awareness campaigns, you can run remarketing campaigns, which is someone who has interacted with your brand already but hasn't purchased, and you can run, let's say, general acquisition campaign, which is just spending money and hoping to get someone, right? So those are the different types, but I would highly suggest a brand which has just come up and is still trying, like with a very, very curated set of products. Please do a PMF first. When I say PMF, like go out to your close friends, family groups, take very, very sharp, strong feedback. Even if you have to do perf marketing, do it in a very, very targeted, small cohort way to really understand, as I said, right, if your retention doesn't stand, you will not be able to acquire in the long run. So really understand what is the true LTV that you're able to generate through that one or two product that you have created for yourself, right? If that seems like a success, then please go ahead and start doing awareness and remarketing led campaigns to some extent, keeping an eye on what is the CAC looking like, etc. But I think, yeah, that's the power of also perf marketing at the end of the day, right? In a world where Meta did not exist, you would have to do the same by taking up coding, for example, right? Which is much more expensive, much more non-targeted, and there's absolutely no way of knowing what is a CAC of a user or who is even seeing your ad. So that's also the very positive side of perf marketing, which you should absolutely use. At what stage and to what extent you use it is a function of how strong your product and PMF is and your appetite of growth.
So basically start small, do little increments and iterate and then increase your spend. If you see early signs of success, then you can invest more in it.
Correct.
Got it. The last question is around the offline stores and online stores amalgamation. So of course our offline store creates the kind of experience we have spoken about it. It sort of gives a great experience to a customer walking in the store. Can we give an immersive experience for an online store also? And have you guys thought about it as well? Like, of course, like you've seen it on bigger marketplaces where Myntra has three-dimensional views and virtual reality is coming in. Is that like, what's your thought on that? Is that something that can compete with offline stores?
Yeah, no, trust me, like we are creating a pod which will help us trying to crack how to, take the offline immersive experience to online, right? And we would love to crack that. It's just that I don't think that we have, to be honest, arrived at the right answer. We are trying out a bunch of things around video commerce, around, very high resolution shots of the products, the features that we have. We are trying out, let's say, how do you change your sizes or, come up with the right color or fit for you, right? And I think it's an iterative journey. There is no single answer which can replace offline as it is, right? It needs to be, and not only how you show the product, right, but even the checkout experience, right? The biggest drop off actually happens because not everyone is comfortable with online payment on a D2C website at the end of the day. So even thinking through that journey of how you're able to show the right product, at what depth are you showing the right product, and are you able to get that trust and social validation to continue the purchase online itself, right? So that entire flow needs to be thought through. Having said that, the point that I was making earlier, right? Our Myntra's 1% effort leads to 1 million orders. Our D2C's 1% effort, putting that same tech may be difficult to get 1 million orders, but it's the right investment to do, right? At what quantum and how much you do is again the answer basis where you stand today. And I think the other good part that is overall happening in the Indian ecosystem is some great startups to support you, like yours also is coming up, which becomes a part of your journey, right? And that's why D2C is also booming, by the way. Like D2C in itself is not booming, but all the surround ecosystem, which is around partner payments, Shopify, Instamojo, etc., is coming up with a lot of those solutions which helps us, right? And I think as a brand, it's very important to figure out who your right partner is, who can help you in this journey. And please use these partners effectively. You can't be building everything from scratch. You shouldn't build everything from scratch because you're not Myntra at the end of the day, right? You will reach a scale where you will build everything on your own. But if you have to start giving a superior experience at a low scale, which you should, use the right partner. I think that's my sort of input here.
Sounds great. A couple of more questions have come up, and I think we have a few more minutes.
Yeah, sure.
So maybe you can take them as well. Next question is, how do I grow a community and keep them engaged? Especially in an online world where you can't let people walk in and it's completely online, and then advertising probably cannot build communities. So what are the ways to grow a community from scratch? Has Blissclub created an online community? Something we can learn from your experiences?
Yeah, no. So I don't think like I have the silver bullet to this question, right? I think we are still in the journey of making this. Yes, we have seen some initial good traction, but there's far better job we can do at this. But like 2-3 things that has worked for us, right? When you build a community, you don't build it on back of promotion first as the principle. Don't try to be pushy about exclusive discounts, exclusive product launches, etc. Right? A community is built more deeper at a personal level in terms of this person connecting to the vision that your brand stands for, right? And hence, how do you make the entire story or narrative around that bit, right? So if you're an activewear brand which you want to unlock for the 500 million women out in India, you have to think that, hey, can Blissclub be the platform which is an information provider, which is anywhere and everywhere something new that happens, we can know about it through Blissclub. Second, can you be also the source of knowing what are the partners or trainers in and around you who you can pair with, right? And we share your questions, queries, discussions with that like-minded cohort. Third, can you create or generate a new form of movement, which I think is very, very critical for these months. For example, when you think of Lululemon in US, right? It grew on back of yoga becoming big in US, right? And that's how Lululemon stood for that. Similarly, Nike, right? When Nike came, there was nothing called as casual running. Only athletes used to run. So Nike stood for casual running and made it as a big thing, right? So identifying what is that single, thing that your brand stands for, and then going deeper and deeper to figure out what really will motivate community for you. Similarly, for Harley Davidson, it doesn't stand really for bikes when it's on the community, right? It is about people getting together, going on drives in the fun way possible, right? So understand that deep point and then do everything that you can to make that happen.
I think we are done with the questions. So yeah, Rahi.
Awesome.
You want to do it?
No, great session, Ankur. I think thanks for having me here. Loved the discussion. Some great questions.
Those who missed it will get to see it later when we probably edit the video a bit, make it more cohesive, and post it on our social media platforms. So again, thank you, Ankur and Soumen, for joining and making this session what it was.
Thank you so much.